Bonnie Parker and Clyde Barrow, names forever linked, symbols of rebellion and crime. Their iconic photos, Clyde with a stolen Ford, Bonnie with a pistol, shocked a nation desperate for distraction during the Great Depression. Headlines screamed, "Gang wrecks town, blood on highway." The press painted them as monsters, law enforcement's perfect villains. But beneath the myth, the real story waited, not monsters, but people shaped by poverty and desperation. To understand Bonnie and Clyde, we must look past the legend and into the evidence. Their own words, the facts, the regrets. This is their story, not of cinematic fantasy, but of the flawed human lives behind the myth. Clyde and Bonnie weren't born villains. They were products of the Texas slums and the Great Depression. Clyde's early crimes, petty theft, car stealing, were acts of survival, not masterful villainy. The brutal prison system hardened him. Bonnie, a bright student and poet, dreamed of more. Her marriage ended in heartbreak, her life reduced to waitressing and longing. Police saw her as a companion, not a mastermind. But her poems reveal fierce loyalty and a tragic awareness of her fate. Their writings and records show not monsters, but two young people shaped by hardship, love, and circumstance. The real Bonnie and Clyde were far more complicated than the headlines ever allowed. Clyde Barrow's story began in rural poverty, tenant farmers, endless debt, and a shack with no electricity. Forced into West Dallas's slums, Clyde saw crime as the only escape from hopelessness. He idolized his criminal brother, dreamed of music, but the streets offered faster rewards. Arrested for car theft, Clyde endured brutal prison conditions that transformed him from petty thief to hardened outlaw. The system didn't rehabilitate him, it forged his hatred for the law and set him on a path of vengeance. Clyde's journey was never about glory, but survival in a world that gave him no other chance. Bonnie Parker's early life was marked by promise, talented, ambitious, and loved. Her father's death plunged the family into poverty, forcing them to West Dallas's tough neighborhoods. Bonnie clung to dreams of poetry and stardom, but reality forced her into a hasty marriage and dead-end jobs. Abandoned by her husband, she became a waitress, her optimism fading into longing and disappointment. Her poetry from this time reveals a yearning for escape and a life less ordinary. Bonnie's story is one of lost dreams and the search for meaning in a world that kept closing doors. January 1930. Clyde, fresh from jail, meets Bonnie, a waitress with a broken arm in West Dallas. The attraction is instant, two restless souls drawn together by longing and rebellion. Bonnie saw in Clyde the excitement missing from her life. Clyde found in Bonnie a partner as daring as himself. Their romance was interrupted when Clyde was jailed again, but Bonnie's loyalty never wavered. She even smuggled him a gun for a daring escape. This act bound them together, partners in love and crime. Clyde's release from prison left him scarred and vengeful, vowing never to return. Reunited, Bonnie and Clyde set out on the path that would make them legends and seal their fate. Amidst the chaos of life on the run, Bonnie Parker found solace in her poetry. Her most famous work, The Story of Bonnie and Clyde, is a rare window into her mind. Her verses reveal a woman both participant and chronicler, offering a counter-narrative to the headlines. Through poetry, Bonnie reclaimed her identity, showing the world the private woman behind the legend. Bonnie's poetry does more than just document her life, it also serves as a haunting prophecy of its end. Throughout her verses, there is a recurring theme of doom, an almost unnerving acceptance that their path could only lead to a violent conclusion. She writes with a chilling clarity about the finality of their choices, acknowledging that the law will win in the end.
This wasn't the writing of someone deluded by romantic notions of escaping to a new life. I understood the high stakes of our game, and had already come to terms with the ultimate price Clyde and I would have to pay for our brief, chaotic freedom.
Historians and literary analysts point to this prophetic quality as one of the most compelling aspects of her work. Dr. Annalise Hartman, a scholar of American folklore, observes that Bonnie's writing aligns with a long tradition of outlaw ballads where the anti-hero foretells their own demise. However, unlike a fictional character, Bonnie was writing her own eulogy in real time. She describes the inevitable ambush, the hail of bullets, and the destiny of being buried side by side.
My words carry the weight of lived experience, transforming a simple poem into a raw and poignant historical document that feels both personal and, well, tragically universal.
The poem also functions as a final message to her family, particularly her mother. She expresses a deep sense of sorrow for the pain her actions have caused, a sentiment that is entirely absent from the public persona of the remorseless criminal. In these lines we see not a hardened outlaw, but a daughter grappling with the consequences of her choices on the people she loves most.
I asked for understanding and maybe just a measure of forgiveness, hoping that my mother would find some peace after I was gone.
This emotional vulnerability stands in stark contrast to the tough, defiant image projected in the famous photographs. Ultimately, Bonnie's poem is her attempt to write her own ending, to have the last word in a story that was largely being told by others. She knew that history, as written by the newspapers and lawmen, would cast her as a villain. Her poetry was her final act of defiance, an effort to ensure that a piece of her own truth, her love, her regret, her clear-eyed view of her own impending death, would survive. It is a voice from beyond the grave, a self-aware and tragic ballad that complicates the myth and forces us to see the woman behind the image, a poet who wrote her own epitaph on the run. The legend of Bonnie and Clyde was built on speed, smoke, and sensationalism. But beneath the myth lies a paper trail, police reports, witness statements, and ballistics analyses documenting chaos in ink and procedure. These records reveal a desperate, impulsive gang, always on the move, leaving confusion and violence across state lines. The paper trail is fragmented, flawed, and incomplete, yet it remains a testament to the chaos and the relentless pursuit of justice. Forensic science offered hard data, but much of the case against Bonnie and Clyde relied on unreliable eyewitness testimony. Witnesses, shaken and pressured, gave conflicting accounts, some describing Bonnie as a ruthless killer, others insisting she never fired a shot. The media amplified these contradictions, cementing Bonnie's image as a gun moll and shaping public memory. In truth, the Barrow gang was a rotating cast, but the myth of Bonnie and Clyde overshadowed the facts. The result? A historical record clouded by fear, confusion, and legend. The relentless pursuit of Bonnie and Clyde pushed lawmen to the edge. As the body count rose, the hunt became less about arrest and more about elimination. The unwritten rule: stop them by any means necessary.
Justice and vengeance blurred as the state's response mirrored the lawlessness it fought.
In the end, the pursuit became a saga of state-sanctioned disorder, culminating in a final bloody ambush. Beyond the headlines, the personal stories of those who survived encounters with the Barrow gang reveal a hidden history. Ordinary citizens, farmers, clerks, motorists, whose lives were interrupted rarely spoke out. Their testimonies add a crucial human dimension to the chaos.
One survivor remembered Bonnie chain-smoking, Clyde's hands trembling, and a fear that silenced many. Another recalled Bonnie giving her candy, a fleeting moment of kindness amid terror.
These stories remind us Bonnie and Clyde were not just legends, but flawed, desperate, and deeply human. In the archives of county courthouses and police departments, not only are there records of what happened, there are also conspicuous absences. Entire files on the Barrow gang have mysteriously vanished over the decades. Some losses are due to decay or poor record-keeping, but a pattern suggests deliberate erasure. These missing files are ghosts in the archive, pointing to stories someone didn't want told. When official records are incomplete, the official story becomes suspect. The missing files remind us the public record is not a neutral account of the past. While the world saw Bonnie and Clyde as glamorous outlaws, their private letters reveal a different dream: anonymity. Bonnie longed for a quiet life, a small house, and even a child, far from headlines and gunfire. Clyde dreamed of going straight, starting over under a new name. But their choices made escape impossible. Behind the legend were two people, yearning for the peace they could never have. The legend of Bonnie and Clyde is thrilling, but behind the myth are real lives lost. Their 2-year rampage left at least 13 dead, 9 of them law enforcement officers. Men like H.D. Murphy, a young patrolman, were killed just weeks before his wedding. Behind every headline was a family shattered, a community in mourning. The true story isn't just about outlaws, it's about the lives they destroyed. The Barrow gang's crimes left a legacy of grief that outlasted the headlines. For families of the victims, there was no closure, only absence and sorrow. Towns were left scarred, their sense of safety shattered. While Bonnie and Clyde became legends, the true story is one of loss, not romance. The real legacy is found in the empty chairs, the quiet mourning, and the enduring pain of those left behind. Before Hollywood, Bonnie and Clyde were already stars, made famous by the press. During the Great Depression, sensational headlines turned them into icons. Editors embellished stories, fueling a legend of romance and rebellion. Their photos and Bonnie's poetry helped shape their own myth. The myth machine served both the press and police, selling papers, justifying manhunts. In the end, the truth of Bonnie and Clyde was lost in the spectacle.
Hollywood took the myth of Bonnie and Clyde and made it immortal, especially with the 1967 film starring Warren Beatty and Faye Dunaway. The movie captured the rebellious spirit of the 1960s, turning the outlaws into glamorous anti-establishment icons. For millions, Bonnie and Clyde now mean Beatty and Dunaway, not the real faces from the Depression. But this myth erases the true story and the victims, leaving only the Hollywood fantasy.
Bonnie and Clyde's end was swift and brutal, a meticulously planned ambush, not a dramatic shootout. In May 1934, Frank Hamer and his posse set a trap on a lonely Louisiana road. Concealed in the brush, they waited as Bonnie and Clyde approached a staged, broken-down truck. The posse opened fire without warning, unleashing a torrent of bullets. Their reign ended in seconds, no blaze of glory, just overwhelming force.
The aftermath of the Bonnie and Clyde ambush was chaotic, a spectacle as much as a crime scene. Lawmen approached the bullet-riddled Ford, finding the infamous outlaws dead inside. Word spread, and crowds descended, turning tragedy into a public event. People clamored for souvenirs, blurring the line between fascination and desecration. The law's triumph became legend, the violence mythologized. In the end, closure was just another spectacle. When the gunfire fades and the headlines yellow, what remains of Bonnie and Clyde? Their story is a tangled legacy, part myth, part reality, where fact and fiction blur. The myth endures, but so do the quiet human artifacts left behind. Their story is not just legend, but a reminder to look past glamour and seek the truth in the dust.